Live an optimal life, through health and wellness. Be well, get well, and stay well.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to jump right into my presentation, and we're just going to talk about some aspects of health, and hopefully it's a few things that can help empower everybody that's out on the call. I'll jump right in. So what I want to talk about today specifically are just strategies for optimal health. But I'm going to start the call by just asking the question, are you truly healthy? And are you truly healthy in every sense of the word? So what do I mean by that? If I was giving this presentation in front of a live audience, I'd ask you to raise your hand. And what's so interesting is when I do that, the majority of the audience raises their hand, okay? But I want to kick the tires on that just a little bit and ask, are you really healthy in every single way? So, my background is in the aging process. I'm a molecular biologist. My graduate mentor was a biochemist. So really, we were trying to understand what was changing on a biochemical and molecular level as we got older. But it turns out there's another practice of aging where you're actually looking after the elderly. So maybe as we get, especially into our advanced age, maybe we need to be institutionalized, and we need these medical professionals to be looking after us. So there's this notion in the aging community or the gerontology community that's known as the aging continuum. And this is especially important for those healthcare practitioners when they're looking after our loved ones, that they need to decide and determine exactly when somebody first becomes frail or a little bit fragile, right? Their goal is to keep everybody in optimal health. But this becomes so important in clinical practice because if somebody initially becomes frail, their goal is to drive them back to optimal health. So they want to drive them back to the left side of this continuum. But what can happen is as the elderly slip further and further down the continuum, deeper into that frailty curve, what can happen is the medical interventions that these professionals are doing can actually do more harm than good, okay? So they need to determine when they first need to intervene, and it also becomes easier for them to drive them back to optimal health. So, I started thinking about this in every aspect of the word, and I started thinking, this doesn't just apply to the elderly. This can actually apply to everybody, no matter what their age is, okay? And it can apply also no matter what health circumstance we're talking about. So are you truly healthy in every sense of the word? And, let me ask you a few questions, but what are those numbers that you're getting back from the doctor? What are your triglycerides? What's your cholesterol? What's your blood pressure, right? Importantly, what's that number that's staring back at you on the scale, right? What's your weight? Are you maintaining a healthy weight? And I'm going to say something that a lot of people hate to hear, but if you haven't calculated your BMI, I would encourage you to do that. And there's some great calculators online. I would just Google the NIH, for the National Institutes of Health, NIH BMI calculator, and calculate what is your BMI. Now, most people scoff when I say that because they hate it. But what a lot of people don't recognize and realize is that the BMI is actually based on scientific and medical data. So they've looked at people's BMIs and then they've calculated what is their health trajectory. And it just turns out the BMI, and especially being in the healthy range, will set you up for the best health circumstance, especially later in life. So it's based on science. Calculate your BMI and figure out exactly where you are. But what can we do to set ourselves up for optimal health? And it really comes down to leading a healthy lifestyle, okay? We have these 6 pillars of health at LiveVantage. So movement. I'm sorry, I wish I had better news, but we still have to exercise. But this can be just simple things like stretching, walking, but then of course going to the gym, runs, etc. are all great for our health. We still have to eat our fruits and vegetables, so we have to consider nutrition. And no, it's not white bread sandwiches. We need to be striving for as many fruits and vegetables as we can eat within a day. Community is a really interesting one. There's these pockets of longevity around the world. They call them blue zones or longevity zones. But what's so interesting, and the one thing they have in common, is they all get together with friends, family, and loved ones and socialize literally every day. One of these longevity zones is located in Italy. I don't know if anybody's been to Italy, but you're hard pressed to have a dinner in under maybe 4 hours. So they're getting together, laughing, joking, just being together, socializing. And it turns out that is incredibly important for health, especially as we get older. Sleep is really this kind of new frontier. The brain is so complex. We don't know a lot about what's going on inside of our brains. But what is indisputable are the links between getting enough sleep and our health trajectory, again, especially later in life. Mindfulness, boy, just think about what you're doing every second of every day, right? If you are sitting down with your family, maybe for dinner, whatever it might be, turn the phone off, be present, be there with your family. I mean, how many of us are guilty, for example, of just driving through a fast food restaurant and just stuffing that food in our face as we're rushing around to our next appointment? Sit down, enjoy, appreciate the food that we're eating, and that will also set you up for better health down the road. And then environment. Our environment that we live in is so important. So not just the outside environment, we don't maybe have a lot of control over that, but you can control the environment inside of your homes, your apartments, your houses. There's been studies that have been done that have shown that actually the air quality inside of our homes can actually be far worse than it is outside, even on the most polluted days. Think about the products you're using, putting on your skin. What are the dishes you're eating out of? Personal philosophy of myself, I hate plastic. So we literally have zero plastic inside of our homes. We eat off of glass plates and glass cups. So think about all of these things and these 6 pillars of health. And when you're doing them, that is how you're going to set yourself up for optimal health. So if we come back to this slide, are you truly healthy? And if you're really honest with yourself and truly introspective, is every single aspect of your health in optimal condition in every sense of the word? Where is every aspect of your health at on this health continuum? So let's put this in a little bigger context, and the context of aging, and probably for no other good reason than that's just kind of what I know best. But if we look at modern societies around the world, on average right now, we're living to be about 80 years of age. Unfortunately for us Americans, it's a little bit lower than 80, but just for the sake of this conversation, we'll keep it at 80 years of age. Look, at the start of the 1900s, so just about 100 years ago, our average lifespan was only about 55 years of age. So think, in about 100 years, we've got a 25-year increase in our lifespan. This is no doubt due to increases in sanitation, medicine, but also nutrition, right? So 100 years we've gained this. And it took us about that same 25 years to get that similar increase in about 1,000 years. So most experts agree that the average lifespan was about 30 at the start of our modern calendar, or the year 0. So it took 1,000 years to get a 25-year increase, and in just the last 100 or so years, we've got that additional 25-year increase in lifespan. But I'm sure there's some young people on this webinar right now, and you might think, who's this guy? He's not talking to me. But you might be surprised to see how early in our lives the aging process actually begins. On that biochemical and molecular level, we can start to measure things changing as we get older, as early as our 20s and especially into our 30s. But then look at the slide on the screen. We can even start to measure physiological consequences occurring in our 20s, 30s, and especially into our 40s. So look, our ears, heart, and lungs, their function starts to decline in our early 20s. Have you ever wondered why most elite athletes around the world are in their 20s? I mean, there's some exceptions to the rules, but it's so rare that there's a professional or elite and Olympic athlete in their 30s and especially their 40s. And that's because in your 20s, you are in peak physical performance. We can look at our bones and muscles from the age of about 35 to 40. We start to lose bone mass and lean muscle from our skeletons. So there's really nothing you can do. What we want to do is, especially early on in life, we want to get as much lean muscle added up. We want to build strong bones, especially when we're young. And then when we hit our 35 or 40-year range, we want to do everything we can to minimize that loss that occurs. And then just one more maybe sad fact, but our brain, right, our reaction time literally slows every year from the age of 18 on. So aging starts actually very, very early. And the sooner we can intervene in this, the better we can set ourselves up, especially later in life. And the fact of the matter is, it gets increasingly more difficult to maintain our health as we get older. In fact, this gets especially challenging in the last 10 years of our lives. If we are looking at modern societies around the world and healthcare costs, it's these last 10 years of our lives where we are accruing the majority of healthcare costs around the world. And quite frankly, if we do not do something about this, it will bankrupt even the richest countries in the world. Healthcare costs right now are just running away. The point I want to make by telling you all of this is that lifespan, quite frankly, is outpacing health span. So if we take that 10-year data that I just gave you, right, that we're accruing the majority of healthcare costs in our last 10 years, and I were to put that on this graph, it's literally setting us back 50 years in all the advances that we made. So our health span, right, that period of time in our lives when we're living as healthy as possible is significantly shorter than our lifespans. And what we need to be thinking about specifically is how we can shorten that gap between health span and lifespan. Quite frankly, we are living too much of our lives living in the wrong portions of this health continuum. And so this is why it's so important to be introspective, be honest with yourselves, and where are you at in every aspect of your health. So maybe that's some of the bad news in the setup, but let me ask everybody on this webinar, do you control your health span? Do you have any control, or is it just like you've sat down at a poker table and you have to play the cards that you were dealt? Or is there something you can do? So generally speaking, there are three major things that contribute to our health span: lifestyle, environment, and your genetics. And we usually call this the rule of three. So if you think about it, 33% related to your lifestyle, 33% your environment, and then 33% is your genetics. But let me ask you a question. Can you control your lifestyle? Every single person should be nodding their head yes. Absolutely, you can control your lifestyle. How about your environment? Can you control your environment? You know, it maybe gets a little bit harder. Maybe we have family ties, job ties that might make it hard to move geographically someplace else. But again, you can control your very local environment. What's going on inside of your house? What are the products you're using to clean your home, to clean yourselves? What about genetics? Can you control your genetics? Now, again, my experience is most people say no. But I'm going to show you some interesting data to talk about this. But let's first take a step back. Let's talk about lifestyle. And I want to show you some data that shows you can absolutely control your lifestyle. So this was a study that was done, gosh, just about 20 years ago by Professor Walt Willett, who's at the Harvard School of Public Health. He's an epidemiologist, so he's very good at looking at populations of people, looking at their lifestyles, and initially determining are these things that these people are doing actually shortening their lifespans. So what Dr. Willett did in this study is actually turn his models on their heads and ask the question, if people were living a healthy lifestyle, could they actually improve their health span? Okay. So on the bottom, it's obviously very generic. It just says condition 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter what these conditions are. I mean, and legally, I can't tell you what they are, but you can probably guess. These are the most important conditions that are affecting especially our health span. But Dr. Willett did these interventions and looked at people that were living a healthy lifestyle that included diet, exercise, lifestyle modifications, and nutritional modifications, including some nutritional supplementation. And he found that in these first two conditions, they were over 70% avoidable, meaning they were able to maintain their health in these cases. Condition 3, over 80% preventable. And then that last condition, condition number 4, was almost 100% avoidable, meaning they were able to maintain health if they were willing to lead this healthy lifestyle. And that last one, just so you know, is one that's related to carrying around too much weight and why it's so important that we're maintaining that healthy BMI. Let me do a little thought experiment with you. It's literally never too late to intervene in your health.
Thanks for watching, and remember, one change can have an enormous effect. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell and the like, and we'll see you next time on Love to Live.